lot of times my customers just tell me what they want, so I am a facilitator in that respect. I'm not much for drawing from the top of my head. When I was a teenager, I had this one friend who would go to the bar and have a drink, and he would sit there and doodle on a cocktail napkin, and he was a pointillist. He would just put dots. And by the end of the night, he would have this incredible picture that was all just dots. And then he would crumple it up and throw it away. And I was like, don't throw that out. That's really cool. I can do that all day long. So I've never been able to draw from the top of my head.
Yeah.
But I've met people from prestigious art schools who go, no, we don't do that either. My process really is to get an image or a bunch of images and collage them into a frame of whatever I'm working on, either a fingerboard or a peghead, and shrink and enlarge, and then when I get them where I want them, I put tracing paper over them, and I do a tracing of them, and I refine that with another piece of tracing paper, and then I go and I make it twice the size of what it's supposed to be. I do my final drawing with as fine a pen as possible, and I shrink it back down to 50%, which is 100% of what it's going to be, and then I make a bunch of copies and start cutting them out and pasting them on the materials. I get a lot of inspiration from the natural world, of course. I've done peacock feathers because I got peacocks all over the place out here, and all kinds of birds and stuff that I've taken pictures of. I was really into photography for a long time, and this is a target-rich environment here in Sonoma County. There's so many different little ecosystems. You can see practically anything you want to see if you know where to look for it.
Yeah.
But I noticed within the last few years that the bird populations were decreasing, and it was just getting kind of depressing to go out and try to take pictures when there was nothing there to take pictures of.
Wow.
So I stopped doing that. And, the internet is a vital resource. You can just type in, blue-footed booby, and boom, you got 1,500 pictures to choose from. And I just want the legs from that one and the beak from that one.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So it's still the collage process, but, I have a lot of different sources. People will send me pictures of their kids. I want this on the peghead. I can do the general shape. I can't engrave as well as other people.
Yeah.
So I get the majority as an inlay, and then I'll send that up to Bob Hergert in Oregon, and who's a great scrimshander. And he'll take the picture, and then we'll come back looking just like the photograph. I like doing that. I like having a multi-process approach where I can kind of be the director. I did a bunch of stuff for the Gibson Custom Shop back in the early 90s, and the guy that was running their custom shop was the guy who managed to get the credit on the calendars that they put out and stuff like that. And it turned out, I went to a show in Sedona one time where they had a bunch of instruments that I had worked on, and I looked at them closely, and I used to engrave my name on them, or my initials or something, and they were gone. And I went over to Henry Jaskowitz, who was the owner of the Gibson at that point. I said, Henry, how come my name isn't on these? And he goes, you're getting paid plenty, you shouldn't care. And I said, that's not the point. I said, you don't have anybody in Nashville that can do what I can do, or you would have them do it for a quarter of what you're paying me. And he just blew me off. So I said, okay, I'm not working for you anymore. That's it. I still don't sign most of my stuff. I have a logo that I put on my more important pieces, but I don't, everything that goes out of here, I really don't, the people that own it know that I've done it.
Yeah.
And down the line, maybe some other people will know that I've done it, but I'm not really into it for that recognition at this point. It's, I've been doing this for 50 years. And right now, I just want to pay my bills.
Yeah.
I still want to do as best I can and improve it as I go along, but, the motivation to be famous is not an issue. So.
Yeah.
You go into the museums and you look at the paintings, and if you can get up close enough, you can see the thickness of the oil on the canvas. You don't get that out of a print.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same way with the inlays. I choose every single piece that I'm putting into an inlay. I have a box of, say, red abalone blanks, and I dump it out on the counter, and I look for the one that's going to fit in that particular spot, and go on to the next one. I glue up the drawing on it. I make a bunch of copies of the drawings, and I This guy he wasn't sure whether he wanted a fancy hawk or something with fewer pieces, which would cost less. So I gave him a choice.
Yeah.
But when I'm cutting these feathers out, they're going to be cut individually. It's not going to be one block of mother of pearl with engraving lines in it, because then even if it's mother of pearl, you can still see the shine of it. That doesn't change at all. Whereas if I cut 20 individual feathers, they're all going to look like individual feathers.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's what I get the medium bucks for.
Yeah.
Don't make the big bucks, but I make the medium ones sometimes.
Yeah.
Usually with CNC, they're trying to economize their time by they'll get these sheets of abalone, which is abalone, or a bunch of different species of shell that are real thin layers of the same figure, glued edge to edge, end to end into a plate, and then they glue the plates on top of each other. So when you sand them down, you're still in the same look of material, and it's consistent. There's no, like with abalone, you might have a little section of heart that will all of a sudden peter out into not plain shell. It'll still have chatoyance, but it will be different. It might have some lines that you go, oh, that's really nice, I'm going to use that. But the serendipity of being able to use the solid blanks as opposed to the abalone is that you sand it down a couple thousandths and it's going to be different than what you expected.
Yeah.
It's like the shell is wanting to express itself too in the work. So I cooperate with my materials as much as possible. But with the abalone, they're trying to make 50 or 100 or 1,000 of something. So they have these nesting programs that will have the same piece just as close to the next piece that they can cut out. They might have 600 of them on this one plate. And the mill will cut them all out. They'll all look exactly the same. Mm-hmm. Each inlay will look exactly the same as the last one.
Yeah.
And that's fine. If that's what you want, that's fine. But I remember one time I was doing a bunch of custom work for the Fender Custom Shop. And I wasn't down there, in L.A. or Fullerton or wherever it is. I was here. And I did this, what was it? It was a Celtic. I think it was the Celtic one. Might have been no, it was the Aztec one. It had this big sun calendar on it, and the entire front of the guitar was inlaid. The back was inlaid in a 3-dimensional thing, and the neck was position markers. It was all this Aztec and Mayan art, and it was in an enclosed case at the NAMM show that year. And I was sitting back about 15 or so feet from the case, and these people, just to see people's reactions when they came by.
Yeah.
And people were either going, oh, that's too much, that's I like my stuff simple, or they were going, wow, that's great. But this one guy and his girlfriend came by, and I think he was trying to impress her, and she was going, wow, look at that. And he goes, yeah, it's amazing what you can do with CNC these days. And I didn't butt in. I just thought, well, it's kind of an insult and a compliment at the same time, because he really doesn't know what he's looking at.
Yeah.
He just thought it was done by a machine because it was tight enough.
Yeah.
I thought, well, there's the compliment part, but I just let that go. But I've always remembered that. It's like, okay, I'll just keep on trying to make it even tighter.
Yeah.
And like Tom Rebecki says, you want to try to get as close to perfect as you can, but if you make it to perfect, that's evil, because there's nowhere you can go from there.
Yeah.
Just heavenly or something was the word he was using. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he's right about that.
Yeah.
I also work on boxes and other things. This was for a friend of mine who is now in the hospital on his last legs, and he gave it back to me. This is the inlay that I did. So that's Ganesh, the Indian god.
Okay. That's pretty cool.
And I do things. I do things just for fun, for myself sometimes, if I have enough time. This is on a piece of Brazilian rosewood I had hanging out. It's a dragon by M.C. Escher, out of one of his books. And I cut all the crystals on the bottom and cut all the facets separately so that they would light up at different times instead of just engraving them. Mother of pearl.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
There's some dyed stabilized wood in here, and some abalone, copper.